What do you think of this recent whites-only pool controversy? Do you think minority kids were rejected from a swim club because of the color of their skin? Or is it possible the club's actions were misunderstood? And do you support a discrimination lawsuit, or should the camp accept an apology and move on? We'll speak with a lawyer who is representing the affected camp about how its founder and campers have reacted to this controversy, and we'll have your comments right now on It's Your Call. It was a story that moved like wildfire. A swim club outside of Philadelphia was to play host several times this summer to a group of inner-city kids, mostly minorities. But after just one visit, it revoked its contract with the camp and refunded its money, saying the pool was overwhelmed and unprepared by the number of attendees. But then some of the youngsters and their counselors are said to have heard what they called racist comments from some club members. And that's when this story went viral. A whites-only pool? Cries went up nationwide. Protests were held. Facebook groups were formed. The Pennsylvania Human Rights Commission was called in, and even discrimination lawsuits were prepared. Overreaction, miscommunication, or a cold, hard truth? That's what we're going to examine. Hello, everyone. I'm Lynn Doyle. In the last couple of weeks, this story has played out in the newspapers, on television, and in chat rooms all over the country. Was it racist? Was it a mistake? And is the club really sorry? It says it is. It's offered an apology and an invitation for the campers to return. But instead, the invitation's been declined, and a lawsuit looms ahead. Is that harsh response to what club supporters say was just a mistake? Or is it a realistic response to charges of racism? I posed those questions first this hour to Gabe Levin. He is the attorney for Creative Steps, whose client is considering filing a lawsuit alleging discrimination. Gabe, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me why the camp and its founder, Ms. Wright, might be considering a lawsuit.
There's a couple reasons. Number one, first of all, we're looking for justice. This is about children who were discriminated against. Horrible things were said to them, and injuries were caused because of what was said to them. We want to make sure that this kind of behavior doesn't happen in the future. We want to make sure that this pool doesn't act this way in the future, and we want to change how people are admitted to the pool and how they conduct themselves on an ongoing forward basis.
You mentioned that there are injuries. I'm assuming that you mean emotional injuries.
Absolutely.
Give me an example of how these children have been affected.
Well, after the children were swimming for a short period of time, they heard statements from some white pool members who said things along the lines of, what are these black children doing here? They might steal from us, they might hurt our children. These things shouldn't be said to children. It shouldn't be said to anyone, and certainly not based on the color of their skin.
You mentioned that this lawsuit is under consideration. Initial reports indicated that it would move forward, but now there is some discussion with your client about reconsidering. Why?
That's inaccurate. We are going to file a lawsuit at some point. The current stage that we're at is the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission has filed an investigation, and if we file our lawsuit, it brings that investigation to a close and the lawsuit moves forward. We want to give them an opportunity to fully investigate what happened here and make a finding.
A lot of people are in support of such a lawsuit, no matter when it is that you would file it. Others, though, say, wait, this is a very extreme reaction to a situation that's been blown out of proportion. How do you respond to those people?
I think if you look at the facts in their totality, there is only one conclusion which can be reached here, and that is that racism and bigotry was the reason these children were precluded from using the pool. I think anyone who sees and has an opportunity to go over everything, including communications between the pool and the camp, what was said, how they reacted after they were confronted with what was said by the pool members, would conclude the same.
All right, let's talk about what was said. If, in fact, members of the club did make these comments, and at this point I have to say they are allegations because they have not been proven in a court of law. If, in fact, the members did say these things, is it fair to hold the club responsible for what individuals do?
No. But unfortunately, it didn't stop with the club members. And I know you say it's an allegation, and I respect that. There are 5, 6, 7-year-old children who were crying based on what was said to them, and I don't believe those were crocodile tears. As far as should the club be held responsible? Absolutely. They held an emergency meeting, they talked about what happened, and they concluded they should refund and unilaterally breach the contract that was formed with the club.
The explanation that the club provided is that it was overwhelmed by the number of children and that there were safety concerns because there were upward of 60 children who had been added to the pool. Valid?
No, absolutely invalid. In fact, I think the excuse that it was a safety concern is ridiculous. They have hosted far more children in the past than the camp brought on that particular day. Those children weren't excluded from using the pool. No one raised security concerns. I think it's important to mention what happened when the children got into the pool. White members removed their children from the pool when the camp members got into the pool. I mean, it was clear that this was a race situation, and the camp was fully aware how many kids were coming. There's email communications which indicate they know exactly, and we're happy and excited to have that many kids come to the pool.
Let's follow through with that. If they knew how many kids were coming, then by virtue of the contract and with whom the contract was made, they knew that the kids were minorities.
Well, I'm not willing to concede that point, and the reason I say that is the application was made online, and all of the communications between the camp and the pool were done via email and over the phone, and I think the first time they realized the race of the children was when they arrived to swim.
There were other camps that had entered into similar contracts, and those contracts had also been revoked, but there had not been allegations of racism there. Could it be a legitimate concern that the club said, wait a minute, we thought this was a good idea, regardless of the color of the skin of the children, but upon hindsight and further review, it's just not a good idea?
I don't know enough about the other camps or the race of those camps or the makeup of them, but I can tell you in this case, I think the evidence, when it all comes out, will be overwhelming that this was a racially created and bigoted reason for not allowing the children to use the pool.
It certainly has caused a lot of controversy, and if nothing else, has created a dialogue that people are engaging in now. To think that racism could still exist in 2009 to this degree certainly is a hot-button topic. There are others, though, who say the club offered to make amends. It offered an apology. It offered to renew the contract. It wanted to welcome the children back. Can you be racist on one hand and then make that kind of offer on the other?
You know, they didn't make that offer the next day. They made that offer after the entire country, in fact, the entire world, called them racist. And lip service at that point didn't amount to safety for the children. And that was, I think, the camp's main concern, that when the children did return to the pool, that they would be safe.
You mentioned that there is overwhelming evidence, and you mentioned that there are 5, 6, 7-year-olds who were in tears because of what had been said allegedly to them. Is it difficult to build a case on what children are repeating?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because first of all, the recollections were recorded very early on. They were on television. I think you probably saw many of them recount what they heard, and adults heard it too. There were close to 10 counselors there that also heard things. So I think the issue of whether or not the members of the camp said bigoted, racist things is not in question. It did happen. It's a question, really, of whether or not the pool excluded the children and breached the contract because of race. It's our position they did.
Well, of course, that is your position, and in the interest of fairness, we did invite the president of the pool club, John Dusler Jr., or his representative to appear as well, but we did not get a response to our numerous attempts. However, in the newspapers, there was a statement that was provided that said, quote, "The Valley Club is deeply troubled by the recent allegations of racism, which are completely untrue. We had originally agreed to invite the camps to use our facility, knowing full well that the children from the camps were from multi-ethnic backgrounds. Unfortunately, we quickly learned that we underestimated the capacity of our facilities and realized that we could not accommodate the number of children from these camps," end quote. To get some more perspective on this story, we'd like to offer you the opportunity to tell us what you think about it. Do you think it was a case of racism, or was it a case of misunderstanding, as the pool president said? Was it a case of the club's capacity and safety issues, as they claim? And more importantly,